So if you've ever tried to play along to Iron Man by Black Sabbath on guitar, you probably know my pain, where you don't really feel like you're ever completely in tune with the song. And for a long time, I was very confused by this, and it was really frustrating because I was learning guitar and I'm like, I think I'm playing it right, but I just never sound like I'm quite locking in. So recently, I wanted to dive in deeper and see why this is. So I was listening to it the other day, and at about a minute 13 seconds, it's this riff. I'll play just a little part of it. That part. Can't play too much because of copyright reasons, but anyhow, if you listen to it, the bass guitar and the guitar sound like they're a little bit off from each other. And then the rest of the riff sounds okay. Then it comes back at a minute 20 and it sounds way different. Like the bass guitar sounds like it's here, the guitar sounds like it's almost a half step off from the bass. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of good news. It means it probably wasn't me. There's something going on within that band. Like any guitar player, the first thing I did was I blamed the bass player. I was like, okay, maybe Geezer is his intonation's off. Something's going on. I'm not sure. So I started to play along with it, and I realized that my guitar was actually in tune with the bass. So that lets Geezer off the hook. And so I thought, okay, so Tony's guitar is a little bit off here. What's going on? So I tried to match his first note, which is supposed to be B in that riff, and I ended up bending enough until I matched his pitch, and it ended up being this much. That's quite a bit. That's almost a half step difference. I measured it by using my tuner. It was about 50 cents sharper than the normal note. I thought, wow, that's a lot. That almost sounded like somebody hit a wrong note on that part. That's how extreme it was. And then suddenly the answer hit me. It all hit me at once. So Tony Iommi, a lot of people know this. He had an industrial accident at work and he ended up cutting off fingertips of two of his fingers. And so he had to get prosthetics put in for him to be able to play guitar. And because of this, his fingers were very sensitive. And so he would use lighter gauge strings. People were saying he used 8-gauge strings, and that's pretty light. And if you've ever used light gauge strings before, extremely light strings, you know that there's a couple issues that can happen. One is that when you bend, it's super easy to bend because the strings are so light that it's really easy to overbend your notes. Also, you run the risk of when you fret and use too much pressure, it's easy to push the note out of tune, to push it sharp. So he's playing it on the 6th string, that part of the riff, and that string is the most susceptible to that problem of over fretting, over pushing to where it goes sharp. And so I'm like, okay, it's starting to make sense now. So if you have 8-gauge strings and you press down on the 7th fret, even with normal pressure, it's easy to push it sharp. Here's an example. I'll play the note regular first, and then I'll give it a little pressure. Remember, these are 9.5 gauge strings. These are heavier than his strings. So his effect would be a lot more extreme than this. Here's regular. Now watch as I add a little bit extra pressure. Isn't that crazy how much of a difference that was? So that's the reason why it's really hard, if not impossible, to sound like you're in tune when you're playing along with it. Because he's using light gauge strings, it becomes this anomaly where he's going to be pressing the string a little sharper than you're probably going to be playing. The good news is that now, well, at least for me, I could kind of rest easy knowing that the anomaly has been a little bit decoded. But the bad news or the downside is that I have to realize that it's going to be nearly impossible to play Iron Man exactly with the recording because of this. Now, there are a few things you could do. I wouldn't really recommend them. One of them is to add more pressure when you play, but I don't want you to ruin your technique just for this one riff. You could also slightly bend the string. I'd probably do that before I pressed harder. Bend just slightly to compensate for that. You can get pretty close that way. All right, all that being said, you have to remember, this is what makes this riff, this band, this era of music so special, is that nowadays maybe a band would hear that and go, oh, we got to fix that. Maybe don't press down as hard, use heavier strings. Let's change the pitch when we mix it. Let's fix it in the mix. To me, it's special because it's a little bit ugly on that spot. There aren't too many bands, like I said, nowadays that would let something like that slide. Everything has to be so quantized and perfect. So I love the fact that it's this strange anomaly. It's quote unquote out of tune, but it adds to the dissonance and the mood of the song. And if you think about it, the song already starts off with that dissonant bend anyway. So it's not like it's a pretty perfect song. And that's what I love about it. That's what I love about imperfection. And that's why it's so special that we can't easily reproduce the riff. Anyhow, that's my theory about why I can't ever sound in tune when I play along with Iron Man. Let me know if you guys agree or if you have any alternate theories. I'd love to hear them. All right, guys, hopefully that was fun to learn about, and go ahead and check it out for yourself. Remember, at a minute 20, you hear the most obvious example of that. And it's kind of sad because you probably will hear that every time you hear it now. And I hope it doesn't drive you crazy. I hope instead you just think, oh, that's what makes this song special. That's the way I want to look at it. All right, guys, have a good one. We'll catch you at the next lesson. Thank you. Bye.